the moment I start speaking. I'm a person who loves the rough and tumble world of politics. I live in it. I live part of the communication I handle. And I'm going to talk today, ladies and gentlemen, about the changing facets of Indian elections. All of us love politics here, in one way or another. And Indian politics is far more interesting than the dull and dreary UK or US elections. So when we talk of the changing facets of India, let's remember that we are a democracy. We should be proud of it. That we have a choice to elect a government that we deserve, unlike the dictators who decide that they will rule for life. But what is politics? Politics is the art of the possible. Any politician, if you tell him that something cannot be done, he will ensure that it is done. That is the art of it. And they live in it. And as you see, and as they grow in times of politics, as they grow from the bottom, these politicians tend to acquire an art that is the gift of the gab. So what are we talking about? I think my slide is stuck. It's not moving. Can you move the slide, please? Elections are what you make of it. And that is the art of possibilities. And that is very important. Because when you actually talk of making it possible, a lot of factors come into play. The politics is all about getting to power. End of the day, a politician wants power. Because without that, it is like a duck out of the water. And that is for sure will make him extremely weak and looking extremely dull. India loves three things, and this picture was tweeted by one of the famous Twitter handles of India called Kochattil. And he had tweeted that India loves these three things: movies, cricket, and politics. Not necessarily in that order, but somewhere in that order. Why? Any discussion that we have, any discussion across the table, sitting with our family, sitting with our friends, will revolve around these three things. We talk about Bollywood or the Tollywood or whatever it is. We talk about cricket. We have a habit of telling Mahendra Singh Dhoni how to finish the innings. And we also know about politics, and we tell politicians how to win an election. We are experts, we are armchair experts in telling all these three things. But remember, elections in India is one big festival. It's like a big chamela. It is like a wedding, an Indian, big fat Indian wedding. There is noise, there is music, there is everything that is on there. And that is what makes the entire thing all about fun. Go back and look at the US election or the British election, they're very, very serious. The Indian election is all about fun, huge rallies, meetings, discussions, TV panel shows, you name it and we have it. But remember, this all leads up to one thing. Every election has a winner and a loser, unfortunately, like any other game. Somebody wins and somebody loses. And maybe a few years later, the same person might lose and the other person may win. But that is what this fun is all about. Because where I'm coming to is to take you as to how this happens. How does one win and how does one lose? Not just in life, ladies and gentlemen, but also in politics. And that's important. Because who will decide what the outcome will be? That's very important. Sitting in this room are many youngsters who possibly would have voted or will vote for the first time. India has about something like 80 crore voters, 80 crore plus voters who decide on the fortunes of this country. It's huge, it's humongous. But how do you decide? How do you decide what to do? It's the voter. The voter decides who will win and who will lose. And as we saw, as I'm taking you through a transition from 2014 to 2019, how the election scenario changed the face of Indian politics. That's what my entire crux of this debate is. How does a voter make a decision? This is a shot I had taken when I was in Varanasi in 2014, where a voter is looking at the slips to see if his name is there. And the first step of the process of deciding to vote. Now that is a decision that he or she will have to take provided his or her name is there, and that's the first step in the election. But politicians and political parties, how do they reach out to the last voter? Remember, the most remotest village, the last voter is a crucial person because he or she is often taken for granted. And definitely, that is where the entire issue is all about. It's all about communication. My favorite, my subject, which I revel in. Because end of the day, when you talk of communication, in any field for that matter, be it in the field which you are right now in your college, and when you pass out, you get a job if you can communicate. And in politics too, you get a job if you can communicate. But that's easier said than done. How does one communicate? How does one communicate to 80 crore voters? Traditionally, we had these elections were all about street corner meetings, we had rallies, public meetings and all that. But there has been a perceptible change. Something changed in the run-up to the 2014 Lok Sabha elections. What is that something? That's what we will look through in the next few minutes that we have. What is it that changed the face of Indian elections from 2014 to 2019? How has India changed forever? And that's what it's all about. It's about the advent of digital and social media. In a country that is so huge and humongous, right from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, and from Gujarat to the other end of it, the east, and Meghalaya and Manipur and Assam, how does one reach each and every person who has the right to vote? It's physically impossible to do that. And the only way to reach them is through the humble mobile phone. And that's what we are doing today. And that's what India is doing. And definitely, TV bans to videos, WhatsApp to Facebook, Twitter, we have it all. Today, look at the last election and this election, the number of messages that you would have got on your phone, the number of videos you have got on your phone would have been super high. Why? Because the targeting of the voters is now happening. You are not realizing that the political parties are actually having a database about you. What your name is, what your age is, where do you stay, what do you do, where do you work, what is your political preference. I myself have seen data that have been mined for lakhs and lakhs of people. They then put that all together and say, this person needs to be targeted this way. And this is the right message to go to that person. Remember, at the end of the day, India has about 4 crore Twitter users, that's 1 in 20. 24 crore Facebook users, that's 1 in 4 voters. Now gets more interesting. 40 crore WhatsApp users, that is 1 in 3 voters. And 41 crore, it has actually gone up to 43 now, that is 1 in every 2 voters. Where in the world would you achieve this kind of propensity? You can hit the message, provided you tailor it accordingly. And that's very, very important. India spent humongous 60,000 crores in the 6-week-long campaign that we saw in the 2019 election. Look at what UK spent, 300 crores. And what did US spend? 40,000 crores. In India, the number is actually 1 lakh crore, because even more than that, because the amount of money that we spend sometimes is not accounted for. Most of it is below the line campaign that politicians don't speak about. Every Lok Sabha constituency, 40 to 50 crores is spent on the campaign by each candidate, that is the national candidates. But how do the social media spends look like? India spends, and the numbers are there, I really don't want to read it out, but end of it, if you look at US and compare it with India, India is still in the lower end of it. Why, we might ask? We spend a lot more, but we spend a lot less in social media. Because there is a rule that a candidate can spend only so much, so the parties want to be very, very careful on where they spend and how they spend. Because I'm coming to the crux of it. This is what it is all coming down to. Elections are all about telling good stories. Remember, now go back and listen to the stories of the politicians whom you listen to and why you voted. Because there is a teller and there's a believable story. I did this for you, and that is why you need to vote for me. That's a story that comes across. Because when a teller speaks, he becomes a winner. Because why does he become a winner? Because he or she has a better story to tell. Our grandmothers used to tell us lovely stories when put us to sleep in the night. And each day the Ekta Raja story used to be different. And for a politician, the Ekta Raja story also is different each time. It is like presenting a report card on what you do. And that is very, very important, ladies and gentlemen. Because how do you know what story to tell? It is your report card of what you promised and what you delivered. Because as Indians, we should remember this fact, that why are we in this digital advantage? Because today, telling a story of a successful campaign is what changed 2014 to 2019. All political pundits got the 2019 reading wrong as much as they got the 2014 campaign wrong. Because none of them listened to the communication that was coming. Targeted communication going to each and every person in different modes, mostly digital. And that is what we should be understanding. How is it that we are now being subjected to a barrage of information that's coming to us? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is very, very important. Because next time when you receive a message, you might really get angry. You might get upset that you're getting this constant calls on your phone, but remember, it is all about targeting you. Because communication is about how you deliver a message, what you deliver, and where you deliver it. And as a communication professional, I can tell you that's extremely important. Today's voters are different from what we had 40 years ago, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. The number of youngsters in the 18 plus bracket, India's 35 and below population is 65%. That's huge. And that is what the politicians want to target. The young audience sitting in this room is an example of that. How do I target that audience and get that right? So comes the question, what is next? Because this is a matter of extensive debate on news channels and newspapers and all. What will happen in 2024? We saw what happened, how 2014 started in a very, very basic premise way with the use of digital media. It improvised by using different digital media, social media, and reaching out to the audience. Now comes the question, what will happen in 2024? I'm not a crystal gazing specialist, but having worked in this field for quite a long time, advising politicians, advising parties on how to do their campaigns, I can tell you fragmentation is going to be the major thing. We're now going to fragment the audience further. We have your entire database. We know where you're born, where you move to work, what your preferences are in drinking coffee or a tea, or what you eat. All these databases with us. We source it from different places. So next time you go to an eatery and order something, remember if you give your mobile number, you're tracked from there. And we get that information. So we know what you love to do. And definitely we will tailor that communication accordingly. Which is why a 50-year-old youngster could not win an election, where a 69 plus gentleman could still win it. Appealing to youngsters, today's audience, is a different ball game. Because in my take, when you talk to people, you need to give them a believable story. You need to give them a progress card. As much as telling, I promised you this, and I delivered this, so give me another chance. Because politics, as I said before, is the art of the possible. Everything is possible, provided we communicate effectively. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is an art that very few have learned, very few have polished, and very few have achieved. And going forward, if you ask me what next, I would say wait for 2024. You will be surprised. Thank you.